Good morning, everyone. Today is October 26th, and you are watching a meeting of the State Street Subcommittee. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and it is also being streamed live on City TV, which is a very good thing. Ms. Perea, if we could please begin with a roll call.
Happy to. Chair Harmon?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon?
Here.
Councilman Gutierrez?
Present.
Great. We're all here. Thank you, Ms. Perea. Are there any announcements either from staff or from my colleagues before we begin?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Jason Harris. I would like to just give the subcommittee and the public an update as I advance the screen here, which for some reason is not advancing for me. Interesting. Okay, there we go. Oh, so the announcement, sorry for those technical difficulties. So you just, Madam Chair, you just referenced to the subcommittee members that on the updated State Street Subcommittee main webpage, we've made the following adjustments. As you can see in the lower half of the screen, this is a screenshot. We have added a link that the public can click directly to the City TV, which now these meetings are being live streamed. So that's for viewing of the public of the meetings. For those wishing to participate and make public comment, we've provided a direct link in the second bullet point there where they can directly register and then get an invite and log in to these GoToWebinar meetings. And then thirdly, we've added a direct email address. Obviously, the public's always welcome to reach out to staff directly. My contact information is on the agenda. However, we've also created a dedicated Future of State Street email. This will be very handy when we go out to the public during the public survey process. And we're continuing to make other improvements and advancements. We will be adding to this page the direct links to the video meetings, and our fine staff at City TV found a creative way to take those out of the GoToWebinar system where you have to register to watch the meetings, you know, one small step, but we'll have those loaded to a YouTube channel. And so we'll have direct links for those past meetings going forward. So I just wanted to make those updates, and that's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. And with thanks to the community members who reached out to us about the need for increased transparency. We really appreciate that. We've heard you, and we will continue to do everything we can to facilitate access. I think we all agree this is an incredibly important ongoing conversation, and we want you all to be a part of it. So thank you very much to that. Seeing no one else popping on, I think we can continue. Mr. Harris, it looks like the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Is that correct? Or did you want to do an agenda review? Sorry.
Correct. Well, just highlighting the two items for discussion today, the update of Future State Street visioning process, and update on the State Street management as referenced. And you are correct. The next item we have listed is approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Sorry, I skipped around there. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments on the minutes? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just a request that there be a little bit more detail in the minutes. There should be more detail on public comment, but not necessarily the names of the commenters than there were on like the actual outcome of the discussion. It says it was presented, but doesn't say that. I'll just ask for a little more detail on that to be reflected, especially those first meetings where they weren't recorded or we don't have more of a record. I think it would be helpful.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, with that, if we could all come on and take a vote. We don't need to do a roll call. So all in favor of approving the minutes of the September 28th, 2020.
There hasn't been a motion yet. Sorry.
Okay. Someone would like to make a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Great. That's a key part of this process. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. And now we'll be moving on to public comment. This is an opportunity for folks who have called in who would like to make public comment on items that are not specifically agendized for us today. I believe we have 2 minutes for public comment. Ms. Perea, is there anyone with their hand raised who wishes to speak today?
Yes, Madam Chair, there are 2 people who would like to speak. There's Kristen Miller and Richard Clausen.
Great.
So Kristen Miller, if you'd like to go ahead and speak.
Thank you so much. I'm Kristen Miller, President and CEO of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce. We represent about 1,100 members and almost 75,000 jobs on the South Coast. And really just wanted to join in today to thank you for the hard work that you're doing on this important topic. We're so pleased with the progress of the committee, especially with the recent approval from the council for investment in the interim infrastructure improvements. Those planters and lighters will be and lighting will be a great addition to both the ambiance and the safety of the promenade. We understand the interim situation here and appreciate the careful thought that is being given to whether to make this permanent or not, and are appreciative of being in the stakeholder meetings about that topic. So I know I've been in one, and we have a lot of our members participating in some upcoming ones, and have been very pleased with, again, the thoughtful commentary about that. I also was a part of a recent assessment around cleanliness on State Street. And we, again, I thought that was great that we got right on that and looking to realize that there are some issues. But again, it certainly looks like you're on top of that and willing to invest more in that area so that we will clean that up, pardon the pun. And we'll stay in touch with this committee as you move into the winter. We're very willing to help talk with businesses and make sure that we're ready to accommodate all of the changes that will be happening with potential inclement weather and things like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Appreciate it. Next speaker, Ms. Perea.
Next speaker is Richard Clausen. Richard Clausen, go ahead and you're welcome to speak.
Thank you, Chair Harmon and committee members. I apologize. I got onto the meeting just a moment too late in the middle of Mr. Harris telling you about what I think are great improvements to the tech side and the transparency side of the subcommittee. And so I may have missed this, but originally the subcommittee had a different, longer, difficult name, and that's what was approved by the council. But now I see we're streamlined to the State Street subcommittee, and I like that very much. I just had a question for Mr. Harris, and maybe he did cover it already, whether online there's links that make it clear that that old name refers to the new name of the committee, and perhaps when somebody looks up the old name, they automatically get referred to the new committee name and or subcommittee name and things like that. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Any more commenters, Ms. Perea?
No, that was it.
Thank you. Well, that will close public comment for this morning. Perhaps, Mr. Harris, you can pop on briefly and just speak to Mr. Clausen's tech question. There have been a lot of folks communicating with us on this, so I want to make sure that we're very clear about it, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Certainly. No, that's a great suggestion. I do not believe we have a statement of clarification of the transition to the new subcommittee name, so we'll prepare such and add that to the subcommittee webpage. So there's some description of the change in subcommittee name, and appreciate the feedback.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. Well, I will now turn it over to you, and we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is an update on the State Street visioning process. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So as always, let me transition to the slide. Again, Jason Harris, Economic Development Manager of the city, and I have my colleagues Nina Johnson and Rob Dayton in the background ready to join in. So as the subcommittee is aware, you've given direction to staff here in the past month or so to initiate the Straight Street visioning process. We identified 10 committees and commissions and an approximate number of stakeholder organizations that we've been conducting these visioning outreach sessions with. We're a little more than halfway through. We actually have 3 scheduled for tomorrow, and we'll be wrapping that kind of visioning outreach process up into early November, mid-November time period. Just broad updates, and if you may have seen any of these sessions, you know, we have a series of questions and we take the participants through both setting the table of background of why we're here and doing this process, and then a series of photographs of both evolution of State Street as well as other pedestrian streets around the country and world. And we're starting to see some very clear themes emerge, described slightly different by all the participants, but clearly some themes are kind of starting to cluster, and so that's great to see. The public survey is also in production. We were hoping to have a draft to share with you today, but it is not yet. So I think for our next meeting, we'll definitely have the final survey for review and feedback, and then that's going to be released to the public. We'll have a large communication push to get that out there, and we'll have a slide that will actually speak to that. As I referenced earlier, we do have a dedicated email address now that the public can email directly to city staff. We'll transmit that to the subcommittee members as relevant. And then just overall timeline and schedule, I'll also review here shortly. So with that, move to the next slide. So here's a conceptual schedule. There's been quite a lot of discussion, and as we move beyond the first couple of bullet points, you know, the schedule starts to get a little broader in time period. So as we've discussed, we're conducting the outreach effort here, initiated in October. That's going to continue into November and into December. Probably the December time period is the public survey portion that will be initiated here in November, and we'll give a good robust you know, month and a half or so of collecting public survey input. Particularly, we're going to get the survey notice into the water mailing bills in December. We missed the November distribution date, so that's will be included in December. We'll be pulling all of that feedback together and presenting to the subcommittee in January, the thematic input from all of this effort, with the intent to develop a vision statement that would then go on to the city council approximately in February of next year. And then through 2021, the year is really the project and policy analysis. And we're starting to extrapolate that, define that process. And it's ultimately working towards a capital project. But as you can imagine, you go from a vision statement to really answering a multitude of policy questions that would ultimately define the scope of a capital project. And then capital project would need to be funded. And so we'll go through that process of identifying funding and the mechanisms and process with the expectation and hope to have a project initiated in 2022. And, you know, each one of these descriptions, as broad as they are, there's a multitude of project milestones and steps of procurement and requests for proposals and all of that is entailed and rolled up into these generalized statements. We're expecting and envisioning probably a 2-year schedule of construction to see a project completed in 2024. So this kind of gives subcommittee and the public a rough order of magnitude. Obviously, all of this is somewhat contingent upon the scope of a project that's defined and process associated thereof. With that, I also wanted to give the highlights of the survey outreach methodology that's being envisioned. So again, you know, we weren't able to do a focus group with the residents. That's just kind of operationally impractical. But the survey, as you'll see, really does elicit, and it's open-ended. And we think we found a creative way to kind of get open-ended responses we're hoping to get a robust response, hopefully into the thousands of responses. So we'll be using the December water bill as one of those methodologies to get that information out to the council, to the community at large. We'll have a Spanish version, obviously available for the Spanish-speaking residents, and have a Spanish outreach effort that will correspond to that. Clearly, there will be an online presence on the website for folks to be able to register and complete the survey. We'll incorporate the library newsletters, probably one of our most robust community outreach vehicles. A number of stakeholders in the community that's beyond just the resident population based of neighboring residents, as well as obviously the overall effort of getting a press release and notifying all our community groups using social media, and as well as engaging with ambassadors and incorporating surveys in all locations. So we have time to think about this. We're still working on the survey, but I wanted to get those initial thoughts and thinking out there. And so as subcommittee members, members of the public have additional ideas, we're obviously always open for input and feedback along those lines. And so with that, I believe we will take questions, input from the subcommittee members before we take this out to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Do my colleagues have any questions on what's been presented thus far? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just I had a question about so the presentations, that they're fantastic, that are going to the public outreach to the boards and commissions. And I really appreciate the historic photos and the stepping through sort of the bigger vision. And I'm wondering if before or at the same time that the surveys are going out to the public, if there's a way to present that in a more holistic way, like a link to a looping video or something with that survey question, because it really does put the whole thing in context. And I think the questions just in and of themselves might not be. So that's maybe just a suggestion. That it's a great presentation, and we haven't had it here, I don't think so. And maybe that's a way to do it too, to have it here as a general. But it's such a well put together presentation, and I think the different groups have different things that they've appreciated about it. So I just want to encourage that gets out there. Really want to confirm we will see these questions before they go out in this broad water bill and everywhere else, right? We'll have a chance to see what okay, thank you. I just want to be sure of that. And then to the timeline. So I just, for myself, want to be clear. So we're making, what is that? The outcome from this subcommittee will be a recommendation or something to council, a vision statement, and then council can then discuss what the project policy issues would be beyond that. So we don't even know that there will be a capital project, or there may be a capital project, but we don't know that at this point. I just want to emphasize that we're not
Correct.
Here proposing a particular capital project and what it will be. Okay.
Correct.
And then just
correct.
Thank you. And a question on that. So just looking at the conceptual schedule, if say, I mean, I think you all know that I think is really important that we have a comprehensive downtown plan. And where would this fit if we're going to council, January, February? Would it be at that point when we talk about the project policy issues and defining where that fits, that would be a time to discuss whether we need to have a more comprehensive downtown plan that this fits into? I'm a little bit weary of having, we now slipped into the 3-year interim. We've made decisions that they're made now, and that shapes the next 3 years. And I don't want to just slip into, that what's happening on this, what was interim, drives now the whole picture for downtown, and how does it inform? So just for myself to know when would be the optimal time to have that conversation publicly.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Dayton.
Yes. Well, I'll start and ask Mr. Dayton to join in. So to want to affirm and respond to the questions, I was nodding along, but I'd like to make verbal affirmations. So Madam Chair and Mayor Pro Tem, you are correct. I should have qualified in this conceptual schedule that assuming that the third step of process that the council ultimately supports a vision statement that conceptualizes a redesign of State Street. That there's an assumption being made in that bullet point there that would then lead to the series of other processes defined thereafter. So appreciate and thank you for highlighting that question, because this is just an assumptive schedule, and conceivably, there's a different approach going forward that the schedule might not be relevant if there's a different outcome of that vision statement adoption process. Secondarily, along those lines of kind of the more nuanced question of broader discussion, policy discussion of downtown evaluation, it really is in that fourth bullet point item of project and policy issues, because the vision statement, I'd maybe kind of highlight in context. I think you all are familiar with the Plaza de la Guerra. Not the project itself isn't of comparable in its evolution, but the concept of a vision statement that was adopted for Plaza de la Guerra is what would be envisioned for State Street, and that in itself, is establishing kind of an overarching vision, but it in itself doesn't really explicitly address a multitude of the subtleties of a project, of whether the street is retaining outdoor dining, whether it is going to be used for parades, et cetera. And it's those sets of questions and process that we define very broadly in this description of project and policy issues. And I think that would probably be the ultimate, the relevant time to then bring in all the other relevancy of downtown questions that Mayor Pro Tem, you're raising of question. And when we bring forward to council the vision statement from the subcommittee, we will define a process and define the policy steps that project policy issues being described there would lay out, so that the council can discuss and think through and ultimately provide direction to staff of how to facilitate and carry that forward. And so with that, I'll open up for Mr. Dayton to add any additional comment.
I would agree with Mr. Harris. And some insights for you, Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon, is that the questions we are asking are starting to get at the answers to your questions. One of the questions we asked was, what role does a redesigned State Street play in the vitality of downtown, which is that broader vision you're thinking of. And we've been surprised that a lot of people think that you've done the lion's share of the work if you just redesign the street to the way they're imagining it. So that's something to consider. And then the other thing is, we're moving at breakneck speed in Santa Barbara terms. And as you listen to that presentation, which we really appreciate you're looking at it and being a part of that. The pandemic is this accelerant to the vision that we've already started. People are really catching that idea. And so what I think Mr. Harris and I have been really delighted about is we've put out there just to put out there, hey, we're in this temporary phase, and then there's this interim phase, and then there's this permanent phase, and people are really latching onto that. So we think there is going to be an expectation of a semblance of a capital project. People are answering the first question, what is the reason you believe what do you believe is the reason for redesigning State Street at this time? People want to get past that question and say, well, we're doing it, right? This is the time. And so, and we've been dancing that, and people's response is, no, we're doing this. So Mr. Harris and I were just even talking about this morning is like, we have to put forward a semblance of a schedule for a capital project just so that we understand what it entails. The other thing to bring it up again and again and again is there's no money on the table for this that's planned to do that capital project. So it's a very nuanced, and we have to be very strategic as to how to do that. So I think we're in these bullet points that Mr. Harris has put forward. We're starting to try to figure out for the committee what that might look like, to tell you what it would look like. And right now, the city's also going through the capital programming, the capital project process with boards and commissions. So we have to take all that into consideration and start to try to put something on the board for you to look at, even though we're at breakneck speed. And I'm always cautious, like, wow, are we really doing this? And it seems like we're really getting pushed in that direction.
Just to be clear, and thank you for that, I'm very supportive, and I appreciate actually how quickly things are moving and how nimble and responsive you have been, and we as a council have been. So I in no way am questioning that. I just, when we're talking about capital outlay and planning, and I really appreciate that you have to start putting it on now to have it budgeted for later. But you know, with the questions that we're asking don't necessarily have to do with housing or arts, or like you're saying, festivals, parades. I mean, that's more the function of the street, but the overall spine in all of its ways that it functions is not being addressed. So I just want to keep sprinkling that in there, that as we're moving forward, that we don't cement anything in place before we've taken that moment. And I appreciate you taking the time to answer that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I did want to just follow up on your first question, Mayor Pro Tem, on the presentation. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Gutierrez, please go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I can wait till after you're done with the question.
Thank you. I'm jumping the gun today. Wow. So that Monday energy. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that the presentation is so great. And I just want to follow up and see if there is a way that we can maybe put it on YouTube and have the link available. Is that feasible? Because I think that would be awesome. And a lot of people would be really interested in seeing it.
You know, what we were.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to just add, we've been discussing that when we roll out the survey, ultimately it's going to be a link because, you know, I don't think we're anticipating getting thousands of paper surveys completed. So this would be an online electronic survey, if ideally for the majority, and maybe we do look at a hard copy version for those that don't have access to the website. But along those lines, we were envisioning having a pre-recorded presentation that we've been giving that would go in tandem with the survey. It's not necessarily that you need to see the video, the presentation to answer the survey, but it's helpful. I think we've been getting positive feedback and acknowledgement, and I think that would be helpful as a standalone versus one that's incorporated as part of one of the boards and commissions. So that was one idea that we had, is of pairing the presentation with the access point for the survey. And Ryan, would you have some additions?
Yeah, one thing that we could do, and Tony Ruggieri of our team is really good at this, is we could come up with a little bit more of a scripted, shorter version. A lot of people don't have a tolerance for 30 minutes. Maybe a scripted, shorter version in the 7-minute range that would be a link that would pop up with the survey. Speaking to what Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon was suggesting, giving context for the survey questions. And then we can, Mr. Harris and I could follow up with our hired survey constructor to make sure that makes sense. But we're always concerned about not being prejudicing the survey in any way, and making sure we get a clean view, so our professional can also guide us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton. Yeah, I would appreciate the surveyor's feedback on that. But in general, I love the idea, especially of a shorter, sweeter video. I think that would be great. Councilmember Gutierrez, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the outreach that you're doing for non-English speakers. I see that you have one for Spanish, but when I think about State Street and the diversity and variety of businesses and business owners, there's languages from all over the world. So I'm just worried that it's great that that's in Spanish, but are you thinking about having it in other languages for those business owners that don't speak English or Spanish that operate in or around State Street?
Well, and Mr. Harris will come on too, but we can do the survey in Spanish language, but I love the idea of, and Councilmember Gutierrez just recently experienced our workshop tool with Zoom translation. It was really cool because you could do both together, and English speakers could watch, and then you could click a button at the bottom, and then Spanish viewers could hear a little bit of the English translation, but have a louder Spanish translation in their view with a different person. And we have the capability of doing that. We have the people in-house in Public Works that could do that. So with your blessing, we could look at how to do that. And maybe that works in tandem with a more public view presentation or public webinar view, where you can actually actively invite people to the live version. And then of course we can have it recorded. The only challenge with the Zoom is that it doesn't record the Spanish translation, but at least they would have the live opportunity to see a Spanish version right together with a live English version.
Okay, thanks. I just want to keep in mind that there are a variety of languages spoken, and I just want to make sure that they all get the information.
Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez. Okay, unless there are any further questions, I think, Ms. Correa, we can move to public comment on this item. Do we have any speakers with their hand raised?
We do not.
Okay, great. Well, that closes public comment then, and we will move on, Mr. Harris, to an update on State Street management, where we look at interim issues. Mr.
Madam
Harris,
Chair?
Yes.
I missed one, and there actually is a hand raised, and I apologize for that. I didn't see the hand, and it is Barry Remus. It looks like he's calling in. So let me see if this is going to work. Barry Remus, go ahead and speak.
Good morning, and thank you, Holly. For a moment, I was ready to put a feverish chat message there to say, "What about me?" Thank you. So I wasn't actually planning to speak, committee members, during this item, but I do have a comment or actually a suggestion regarding the outreach for this public survey. I do see that we've got a number of different channels that are planned, and that's wonderful. And obviously, the key is to be able to reach everybody as a wide breadth radius as possible. So one thing I was wondering is, when it comes to the utility statement through the water bill, my understanding is that typically only goes to property owners. And so a way to be able to hopefully reach a larger majority of our residents who are renters, if it's possible to coordinate with Southern California Edison to see if they could also include a notice in the electricity bill, which would go to all residents, or hopefully most residents, not just property owners. That might be something to consider as well. That was all I wanted to comment on at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great idea. That closes public comment, and we will move on to item B, the update on State Street management. Harris, Mr. Dayton, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this third item today is update on State Street management. And this is kind of a broad recap, but wanted to take the opportunity to both keep the subcommittee informed, but also the public at large. So here recently, in the past 2 weeks, council approved, as well as the subcommittee made recommendation for the enhancements to the traffic control devices. Again, here's a photo rendering on the slide illustrating the improvements that are coming later this year. We're going through the procurement process, so we have to go through the RFP process and all of those steps. So we can see the terracotta planters that will be installed at the intersections, the bollards, as well as the green painted striped lanes, as well as a variety of signage directing the cyclists to the center of the street, the pedestrians to the sidewalks, and obviously the traffic control. And then, as always, highlighting the lighting. You can see a strand of the covered lighting element that will be incorporated into State Street. And in a week, we will be going to daylight savings time. So we'll be losing an hour of evening daylight much earlier. Similarly, at the beginning of this month, updated guidelines for the outdoor dining areas, the parklets, to continue to reinforce Americans Disability Act requirements, storm flow, as well as the winterizing of these spaces with heaters and any tenting canopies. As part of those guideline processes, public works staff and fire staff will be conducting field inspections and have I've already done a first pass through of giving the guideline notices directly to those businesses. So there's no and checklist of affirmation that they've received those. And then obviously staff will be making follow-up visits now that they have those in place to ensure that they're making those required modifications. And there is an insurance requirement for these as well that is going to be incorporated. And then most recently, the council approved the shared electronic bike program that's both a part of State Street as well as the waterfront. And we had some great community feedback to have Historic Landmarks Commission chair to facilitate site evaluations for the location of those docking state locations for that program. And there is a concurrent effort to continue to kind of brainstorm and think through the opportunities to partner with our community groups and our residents on increasing the information and resources for bike safety and outreach and how to facilitate and communicate effectively to the public at large and principally the cyclist of appropriate cycling behavior on State Street corridor explicitly. So with that, I'd ask Mr. Dayton if he had any additions he would like to make to those updates. If not, I'll move on to the next item. And the next
perfect. No updates.
Great. And then the next item is just a notice if if you have not seen this, the Downtown Santa Barbara organization is organizing a promenade market starting next Thursday, November 5th. It will be every Thursday afternoon, early evening up till mid-December as an initial pilot, 3 to 7:30, initiating on this 1,000 block and with the possibility to expand the 900 block depending on the level of vendor interest. And this is both to, again, create in a safe, appropriate manner. We've worked closely with county public health, environmental health services to facilitate this. This would be kind of the same concept as the farmers market where there'd be vendors staged in the street, appropriately set back and distancing of clients. But again, creating some unique atmosphere and vitality to the street and really looking to support our downtown retailers and really engage that center section of State Street. We've got some great vibrancy of food business clusters on the north and south ends of the downtown State Street corridor promenade area. This is to activate the center and really support our retailers in that method. So we have an update there. And with that, that was really the culmination of what I'm describing as the State Street management, because there's all various aspects of management administration of all these initiatives, but I'm using that as a recap. So with that, I'm available and my colleagues to answer any questions that the subcommittee may have.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions about, I like the idea of activating the middle part where you don't have so much activity from the restaurants. I sort of continue to not be able to visualize, and you can help me with this, like with the image that we have on the screen here, if you have bicycles in the center and then open market stands and then people walking and restaurants also, I don't see how that all fits, I guess. I can't really picture it, and I'm very concerned heading into flu season and these next spikes that are projected. what this means. We're so successful down there, and I just am a little bit worried about our success in terms of how, and I appreciate your working with the county, and maybe you could just describe for us how that works. And I guess if we're channeling all the cyclists down the middle, just help me with that, with the vision.
Certainly.
Of that.
So if you haven't been to the farmers market on Tuesdays, I would encourage you to do so, because you will see how the street has the ability to flex and accommodate. And as much as State Street is part of our bicycle network, it is also our promenade, and it's being utilized to support a variety of functions and uses, such as outdoor dining, farmers market, in this case, the Thursday evening promenade market operation. And so ultimately, I'll use, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my the cursor on the screen, but the farmers market and the promenade market on Thursdays would facilitate in a similar manner. The 1000 block only has I think 2 outdoor dining spaces. The 900 block, I don't believe, has maybe 1. So there's not the number of outdoor dining spaces on those blocks, and that's why they were identified. So you really don't have that much of a conflict issue. The vendors will set and stage principally on one side of the street. I'm not sure what side that they're orienting to, effectively allowing the other side of the street to be of greater capacity for cyclists to work down and have that available spacing. If you recall from the discussion earlier on these interim improvements, Mr. Dayton spoke of the kind of the approach that's being taken here is to give some direction and orientation for cyclists to orient towards the center of the street, but that green bike lane kind of orientation doesn't carry through for the full block. And that's for a number of reasons, principally just to not necessarily create this dedicated bike lane that the cyclist would assume is free and clear for pedestrians, which it's a mixed, it's a mixed use area. So we have all sorts of activities, not just pedestrians, but other variety of activities, cyclists and skateboarders and outdoor dining. And, in this coming period, we're going to have 2 markets, a Tuesday night farmers market and a Thursday night promenade market. And so the street in those 1000 and 900 block has the space and capacity for vendors on one side and cyclists and pedestrians on the other. And again, it's this environment the cyclists need to really, and the majority do. It's, obviously we hear some very infrequent and unfortunate scenarios where there are some collision, between a cyclist and a pedestrian. But for the most part, the cyclists are aware and riding appropriately. We have a 5-mile notice to cyclists and which is just a kind of a fast walking speed. So really, this behooves the cyclist to ride with care, and for the pedestrians, for the most part, to be aware of the environment that they're in. And so we're approaching this. We have the confidence that this won't create a public safety issue. And then also, it's been highlighted as Mr. Dayton and I have gone and conducted this focus groups, the feedback that we're getting, not only to the focus groups discussions, but also just real-time feedback from the public at large as they're experiencing this space. And one reference has stuck to my mind. We've used words choices such as temporary and interim. But I think it was maybe a planning commission member made a reference that, well, in some ways, this is an experimentation, that we're experimenting currently with different uses, principally experimenting with dutiful intent to support our businesses to allow the outdoor dining activity, and one would say with purposeful intent to support the farmers market, incorporating that in, and purposeful intent to maintain bicycle riding and give some direction there, and purposeful intent to also try to activate some of these quieter blocks and also support our downtown retailers to bring some additional activity. That's, again, publicly safe activity. So I know that's a broad response, but hopefully that addresses questions.
I very much appreciate that added detail, and now I can visualize it, and I really couldn't. And we hear from the public, and people are worried, and that really helps me to be able to explain why it can work like that. I really appreciate that. And I also really like the shift to calling it experimental. That's been one of my issues with, if we call it temporary and interim, then it just sort of is a continuum on to permanent, and it gives the impression that whatever we're doing now is going to stay that way. And I think we all are supportive and want to see this succeed. And I think having the experimental, like a street might be closed for a while, like Victoria, and then not. And we have to be able to adjust and be nimble like that. So I think that's a great shift to experimental, and that we're trying to see what will work in the long term. And that's part of being responsive and responsible to the public. And I very much appreciate that extra detail and consideration on those answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez, do you have any questions?
Not right now, thank you.
Thank you. I do have, just briefly, I will direct this to Mr. Dayton. I know, as Ms. Miller pointed out, we met last week to discuss cleanliness on State Street, and I'm hoping you can give our viewers just a little bit of an overview, and particularly if you could share with them how they should contact the city, or whom they should contact if they see a cleanliness issue that needs to be resolved. If you could just give us just a high-level overview, I think that would be helpful for folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are on the street every morning cleaning the street. So we have 3 contracts that are on the street right now. We have a janitorial service, so they're coming up and down the street, making sure everything's clean. It's amazing amount of trash that's actually put out on the street every day. The other thing that shifted is that now that there's no vehicles down the street, the vehicles were very handy to clean the leaves and push them to the side. So we're actually responsible for a much greater area. We're working in tandem with the street sweeper and letting them into the plaza, and they have to still work around the restaurants spaces. But that's an added benefit, so that we can get those leaves off the street, blow them to the cutter, and then get them out. And then we have a power washing crew that's doing power washing. They do that weekly, and then also do spot cleaning. So we have spot cleaning when we have issues that the ambassadors identify on the street, particularly some of the more challenging ones that go down. And then we also have a landscape crew that's on the street doing landscape on a weekly basis. So they're there making sure that everything's trimmed properly, that there's recently had a new upgrade in plants. The same plants that are approved by HLC were replanted if they were died. So everything's been replanted, and we're under contract with them to make sure that those plants live on. And then the other thing we recently did this last week is we also, because all of our services are done in the morning early before people get there, which is different than the past. So in the past, when downtown Santa Barbara was doing it, their crews worked during the day. So you'd see them working up until about 1 in the afternoon. So we now have someone on the street who's there, who works you'll see them on the morning going up and down the street, who's picking up trash that gets thrown down in the morning. So trash that since we cleaned, it gets put down to pick that up. And then also to identify a graffiti in real time and take care of that on the spot. So he's got a cart. He can easily identify him as a downtown parking employee who's going and making sure that if an ambassador calls in something that we can deal with right there that day on the street, that we take care of that and don't have to wait till the next day. So we'll see how that works out. Trying to just make sure that cleaning is visible to the public and the business owners is a high priority for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton. I really appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. And I know a lot of business owners in particular are going to be very grateful to see that that person who's out there responding to immediate concerns in particular. So I really appreciate you putting that together. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just have a question about how these upgrades or updates of the management on State Street, how far is it going to reach? Is it from the 500 block to the 1200 block, or is it also taken into consideration on the other side of the freeway on the 100 block of State Street, or also like Victoria Street, since that's temporarily closed?
That's a great question, Madam Chair, Councilmember Gutierrez. So it's all the way from Cabrillo to Victoria. And I know that there's some people on the 1200 block or the 1300 block, which is Victoria to Sola, and because it's partially closed, that feel that needs to be done. We have been doing some responsiveness. We don't do a daily clean up in that area, but we have been responsive to some requests that we have gotten.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I will open this up for public comment. Ms. Perea, is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak on this item?
Yes, we have 3 raised hands. We have Barry Remus, Robin Elander, and James Marston. Barry Remus, you're first. Go ahead. You're welcome to speak.
Good morning again, Chair Harmon and committee members. It's Barry Remus representing Coast, as well as our partners with SB Bike. It's really exciting to see, and we also want to appreciate and thank staff for the update on the management aspects and things that are going on State Street. And it's really exciting. We're obviously looking forward to the interim enhancements, both for safety and aesthetics. We're hoping that staff might be able to indulge us. I don't usually ask questions during public comment, but with just an estimated, like an ETA on when we might expect to see the planters, the green paint, and the lighting possibly go in. I know those need to be procured. Also, with respect to the new market, fantastic. I love we're in full support of this exciting addition to the promenade in a safe way, of course. We want to congratulate downtown Santa Barbara for being able to put that together. And then one thing I might want to recommend, if it's possible, was also wondering myself, with the night market being in the middle of the street, sort of off to the side, like the farmer's market, how that would work, as Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon indicated, with cyclists versus pedestrians, and keeping them, somewhat separated. If we are able to think about orienting the vendor stands toward the sidewalk, looking at that way, more of the shoppers, if you will be oriented by nature towards the side of the street, so that cyclists may be able to maintain their path down the center of the road, and maybe keep that continuity going. So that's just a thought to consider if it's something that can work out that way. And I think that was it for my public comment. So thank you very much. We really appreciate the State Street Subcommittee's ongoing initiative here. And also Coast and SB Bike, we want to be there to be able to help with the outreach of the survey. So once it's ready, let us know and we can help get that out through our channels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Remus. Next speaker, Ms. Perea.
Next speaker is Robin Elander. Robin, you're welcome to speak.
Hello, Madam Chair, council members and staff. My name is Robin Elander, Executive Director for the Downtown Santa Barbara organization. I'm so thankful for what you're working on. All the things you're speaking of today and for your many meetings have been really important areas of focus for our downtown community. Particularly very happy to hear that we are moving ahead with the terracotta pots, planters, lighting, the green paths. And also I've been working with Councilmember Gutierrez on some youth bicycling initiatives to connect with our youth riders and to do it in a very positive way. We know we have issues to address and we're trying our best to come up with good community solutions. It's a work in progress, but I just want you to know that that is a priority for me in collaboration with you all. Particularly bike share is so significant for our downtown, and being able to have that and experiment with how that's going to work and flow is going to be really positive. Also, the fact that you're working to address these cleanliness issues and also share with the public how that's happening, because it is a significant change, and working together to address that is very good. graffiti on the spot as well. There has been more graffiti, and having staff be able to clean that in the moment is really significant because I've seen an increase on that. One question that did come up to me is on De La Guerra, where the intersection meets with State Street, if that will also be a place for terracotta pots and planters and how that flow will work. And I just want to end with just saying thank you for all you're doing. This is really significant stuff. Lastly, the homeless issues that we're having, I've been working on Friday with Jeff Schaefer, the ambassadors, and finding ways to address those issues. There are significant issues downtown and lots of stuff to work on together. We just appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elander. Next speaker, please, Ms. Perea.
Okay, the final speaker is James Marston. James Marston, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. James Marston here. You know, I've been concerned about some of the accessibility issues on the promenade, and I was very glad to see the new guidelines are now calling for a 6-foot path of travel on the sidewalk, bringing people out to the street, because the sidewalks got very crowded and very hard for people to get through. So I was glad to see that. I want to bring up 2 things that I think are missing in this interim area. Number one, there still is not much public seating downtown. For some reason, most of the benches have been taken away. They're still not there. And now people have to pay to eat at a restaurant just to sit down. So the elderly, the disabled, little kids that you have with you, there's hardly any public seating. And I hope that we can look at that and think if it's really a promenade for everybody, there should be places for the public to sit without having to pay for something. My biggest concern is this city has tried very hard to keep cars away. We had plans to have people living downtown without cars, which is a great idea. That's what I do. And also having visitors come up from LA on a train or something and keep the cars off the street. Now we have no way for people to get to the beach area without a long walk and through the underpass and stuff. The shuttle was very important for that. I hope that we can really look at making the shuttle maybe go up Chapala and down Anacapa. But think of all the people, whether it's elderly or those who choose not to have a car or those who can't afford one, who want to get down to the beach. And it's a 1.5 mile walk through all this promenade. And I just hope we can have some kind of shuttle there. I'm all on the ocean side. Are they really going to walk up 1 mile just to see what's in this wonderful State Street if they can't get a view of it from their car or from a shuttle? So my time's up, but please try to figure out what we can do about some kind of a public transportation, okay? Thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, Dr. Marston. Ms. Perea, are there any further comments before I close public comment on this item?
There are no further comments.
Thank you. That closes public comment. And before I open it up to my colleagues for any discussion or further thoughts they might have, I'd like to just follow up with Mr. Harris on a question from Mr. Remis regarding the ETA on the interim improvements. Can you give us a brief sense of what we're looking at? I know there's quite a bit to go through in terms of procurement, as he said, but do you have a general sense?
Well, I know. Go ahead, Mr. Dayton.
Madam Chair, we have the lights are under contract, so we were able to get that right away. So that is underway. So you'll start to see lights going up. We already staged some lights at De La Guerra and State, and of course the ones closer to Anapu. So those will start to go in. The POTS has a longer time lead because we had to wait to put those out to bid, and then there's a lead time to have those manufactured. So those will probably be, we're going to try to get those in before Christmas, but that is going to be a longer lead time, unfortunately. And of course, we're not going to lay any paint until we get the pots and the bollards to do that alongside those. They work in tandem. Ms. Elander asked about De La Guerra Plaza. De La Guerra Street at State Street has the K-rails because it's a location where vehicles can speed directly into State Street. So wherever you have the opportunity for vehicles to speed right into the street, you'll see the barricades The traffic engineer wants to make sure we had the water fill barricades for that particular instance. So we have not planned pots for that entrance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dayton. I have to acknowledge that I was remiss in failing to open up an opportunity for my colleagues to speak on the State Street visioning process earlier. So I would invite them if they have any additional comments on either that item or on the update on State Street management, please do make your comments now. And hearing none, I think someone's mic is on, so I just want to warn whoever that is. I know a number of us have had some hot mic moments lately. I would just close by adding my sincere thanks to the chorus of thanks to staff who have been so incredibly responsive to the many concerns. I'm really gratified to hear that a number of the issues that we started out talking about 6 or 8 weeks ago, we're really seeing tangible improvement on. So my sincere thanks on that, and very much looking forward to continuing engagement in terms of what the interim and long-term future of this street is going to look like. So if there are no further comments from my colleagues, I will close this meeting of the State Street Subcommittee. Hope everyone has a good week and looking forward to seeing you here again in 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thank you.